Good morning. I'm Stephen Leake. I'm an elder at First Presbyterian Church of Mesquite, Texas, and I'm also one of the teachers of the Discipleship Sunday School class there. Today we continue with our study of the Gospel of John, and I'd like to remind you that our curriculum is based upon the Daily Bible Study Series by Professor William Barclay, and that we're using the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible for our scripture readings. Last time we concluded chapter 17, that time when Jesus had alone with his disciples. And with chapter 18, which we're starting today, the Passion begins. And today we're going to study the first 11 verses of chapter 18, which covers the arrest of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. After Jesus had spoken these words, he went out with his disciples across the Kidron Valley to a place where there was a garden, which he and his disciples entered. Now Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place, because Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas brought a detachment of soldiers together with police from the chief priests and the Pharisees, and they came there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Then Jesus, knowing all that was to happen to him, came forward and asked them, "Whom are you looking for?" They answered, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus replied, "I am he." Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When Jesus said to them, "I am he," they stepped back and fell to the ground. Again, he asked them, "Whom are you looking for?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. So if you are looking for me, let these men go." This was to fulfill the word that he had spoken. "I did not lose a single one of those whom you gave me." Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it, struck the high priest's slave, and cut off his right ear. The slave's name was Malchus. Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword back into its sheath. Am I not to drink the cup that the Father has given me?" When the last meal was finished, and when Jesus' talk and prayer with his disciples were ended, he and his friends left that upper room. They were bound for the Garden of Gethsemane. They would leave by the gate, go down the steep valley, and cross the channel of the brook Kidron. There, a symbolic thing must have happened. All the Passover lambs were killed in the temple, and the blood of the lambs was poured on the altar as an offering to God. The number of lambs slain for the Passover was enormous. On one occasion, 30 years after the time of Jesus, a census was taken, and the number was 256,000. We may imagine what the temple courts were like when the blood of all those lambs was dashed on the altar. The blood drained from the altar down to the brook Kidron, so when Jesus crossed, it would still be red with the blood of the lambs. And as he did so, the thought of his own sacrifice would surely be vivid in his mind. After crossing the Kidron, they came to the Mount of Olives. On its slopes lay the little Garden of Gethsemane, which means oil press, the press where the oil was extracted. Many well-to-do people had private gardens there. Space for private gardens was limited in Jerusalem because it was built on top of a hill. Further, there were ceremonial prohibitions which forbade the use of manure on the soil of that sacred city. Some wealthy citizen, an anonymous friend of Jesus, must have given him the key to the gate, along with the right to use it. Jesus and his disciples must have gone there often for peace and quiet. Judas knew that he would find Jesus there, and it was there that he decided it would be easiest to engineer the arrest. There's something astonishing about the force which came out to arrest Jesus. John says there was a company of soldiers together with officers from the chief priest and the Pharisees. The officers would be the temple police. The temple authorities had a private force to keep order and carry out the decrees of the Sanhedrin. The officers, therefore, were Jewish, but there was a band of Roman soldiers there also. It's not clear how many Roman soldiers there were in this detail, but the Greek word used here can mean anywhere from 200 to 1,000. At Passover, there were always extra Roman soldiers in Jerusalem quartered in the Tower of Antonia, which overlooked the temple. So the men would be readily available. When the authorities decided to arrest Jesus, they sent almost the equivalent of an army to do it. Few scenes in Scripture show us the qualities of Jesus, as does the arrest in the garden. First, it shows Jesus' courage. At Passover time, the moon was full and it was almost like daylight outside. Yet the enemies of Jesus had come with lamps and torches. Why? They did not need them to find the way. They must have thought that they would have to search among the nooks and crannies to find Jesus. But when they arrived, Jesus stepped out and demanded, "Who are you looking for?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they cried. Back came the answer, "I am he." He stood there before them, defiantly and courageously. Second, it shows us his authority. There he was, one single, lonely, unarmed figure, and they there were, an army, armed and equipped. Yet face to face with him, they retreated and fell to the ground. Third, it shows us that Jesus chose to die. Here again, it's clear that he could have escaped death if he had wished. He could have walked through them and gone his own way. But he did not. He even helped his enemies to arrest him. He chose to die. Fourth, it shows us his protective love. He was not thinking of himself, he was thinking of his friends. "Here I am," he said. "It is I whom you want. Take me and let them go." Jesus' protective love surrounded his disciples, even in Gethsemane. Fifth, it shows us his utter obedience. "Shall I not drink," he said, "the cup that God has given me to drink?" This was God's will, and that was enough. Jesus was faithful to the death. Now there's a figure in this story to whom we must do justice, and that is Peter. He, one man, drew his sword against the army. Peter was soon to deny his master, but at that moment, he was prepared to take them all on. We may talk about the cowardice and failure of Peter, but we must never forget the sublime courage of this moment. Thanks for joining me again this morning. God bless each and every one of you.